Ladies and gentlemen, we're on our way. I know it's Sunday morning, and I know some of you have been up bright and early discussing the future of the universe since 8 o'clock this morning. Congratulations. Now we come to the real fun. We're going to talk about Germany and Europe. I have been trying to understand Germany for rather more than 40 years. I think the first time I went on a trip to Berlin as a young schoolboy was only 2 or 3 years after the Berlin Wall was built. And I'm still confused. But I'm now sitting back in Berlin as the Financial Times correspondent, and I never realized what an extraordinarily good moment it was to be actually going back to Berlin. And to be sitting, we had long discussions yesterday about Russia. I think I'm sitting in the capital of the country that people are almost as confused about as we are about Russia. So it's a really good subject to be discussing this morning and to have such a splendid panel to discuss it. Both lots of experience and, I'm sure, as we will discover in the course of the next hour and a half, lots of insight. Uffe Ellemann-Jensen, former Foreign Minister of Denmark, a former journalist, of course, so somebody with a very distinguished background, really, in spite of being a politician. Uffe has been an observer of European politics all his life, I think, so a very good person to do it. On the far end of our panel, we have Paweł Świeboda, an observer of Germany from the distance of Warsaw, but a very regular visitor to Berlin. Indeed, Michael Link, who I think we are extremely fortunate to have linked to as Minister of State, the new Europe Minister from Berlin, coming on his first trip, I believe, to the Baltic Republics as Minister. And Paweł and I were both guests of Mr. Link's last Monday for a very interesting discussion about the future of Europe. So that's something that we'll also get into. And certainly last but not least at all, François Bujon de l'Estaing, very distinguished French former diplomat, ambassador to Washington, ambassador to Canada, diplomatic advisor to Jacques Chirac when he was Prime Minister in the first cohabitation, and somebody who also has been, therefore, a follower of European affairs and Germany's role in them for all his career. So I don't think I need to do very much more than put the question. Reluctant leader of a lost continent. That's pretty brutally put, Kadri Link. And I'm going to put it first to Michael Link as our first speaker. Minister, are you guilty as charged? Are you reluctant? Are you the leader? And is the continent lost? Have a go.
Thank you, Quentin. Good morning, first of all. Lennart, Meri's conference is, as always, well-timed and, of course, in its topics, well-placed. I think we should add some clarity to the confusion in this case. And of course, neither are we a reluctant leader, nor are we a lost continent. Why? I think it is absolutely clear that Germany, and first of all, I would like to speak about Germany. I think whether the continent is lost, we should answer there together. But in the case of Germany, we are perfectly aware that eyes are on Germany. They are in Germany not because we are the only ones, the nicest, the prettiest, whatever. There are some factors that are very clearly causing that the public focus, especially in the debt crisis, is so much on Germany. There are several aspects. First of all, our economy makes us one of the most vital in Europe. Our geography makes us the most central. Our demography makes us one of the largest, but, by the way, also large, of course, yes, but also shrinking. That's another concern. And finally, our history makes us careful. So a lot of reasons to make very clear that Germany always has to make absolutely crystal clear what it stands for where it stands, where it wants to go. If you call that leadership, you can do it. But of course, we don't want a leadership that is a leadership by domination. We don't want a leadership by giving a unilateral direction. We don't want a leadership which is just saying to others, let's go like this. And we even don't want a leadership exclusively together with France to tell third countries where to go. So the delicate balance to strike for every German government, be it a Christian Democrat-led with liberals as a coalition partner, or be it a social democrat-led government with Green Party as coalition partner, or even be it a so-called, as we call it in Germany, a large coalition by Christian Democrats and Social Democrats, there are some constants. And these 4 points that I mentioned, they are the constants that really define Germany's position. Demography, geography, economy, and history. And the geography is really so important. We often forget it, especially after Schengen. By the way, Schengen is a good topic to speak about also later. We forget it in times of Schengen that Germany is the country with the most neighboring countries, the most of borders. No other country in the EU has more neighboring countries. So we also profit enormously from the European integration, even much more than many others because of our central situation. Then demography, being the largest, gives us also responsibility to speak out clearly and also to care about immigration because we need specialized labor force because our demography is rapidly shrinking. Then history. Sorry, first of all, we should speak about also the role of economy. The economy still is very vital in Germany and we get remarkably good through the crisis. And finally, history. History, as you know, is something which has to make us very careful because in the past, not every neighbor had the best experiences with us. So it is also always a responsibility when we speak out not to overrule others. So finally, the question is, how do we lead? And leadership, first of all, of course, I like the title, but it should be clarified. Leadership is the question of when and where, of timing and direction. The question of timing, I think, and I will finish with 2 examples. The question of timing we have answered as Germany, as the federal government, very clearly. Let me give you an example. We have been ready to lead very clearly together with others. It's always about leading together with others. When it came to the necessity of implementing the ESM earlier. We have pushed and speeded up the calendar for ratification. It should enter into force by July 1st. And we have been ready very clearly to say we are ready to pay in half of the amount as early as possible in the capital stock of ESM. It was very important together with others to send a clear signal very early that we are ready to implement it earlier. The other thing of leadership is, of course, next to timing, is direction. It's good to lead, but where do you want to go? And here, my minister, Guido Westerwelle, he initiated, Quentin and Paweł have been there on Tuesday. He proposed a reflection group for the future institutional questions and the further deepening of the European integration. It is not a constitutional debate, but by doing that, we wanted to say very clearly that even in the times of crisis, maybe especially in the times of crisis, it's important to take the lessons from the crisis and to say, okay, let's think also on future steps of integration, because we need more integration. Guido Westerwelle very clearly says that, and I think he has developed a dynamics on that, making it clear that even not having a constitutional debate, nobody needs a constitutional debate right now because it's so easy to stop. It's a non-starter in many countries, Netherlands, Ireland, etc. But nevertheless, everybody agrees we need more integration in certain areas. So I think we are ready to lead in the right timing, in the right direction, but not alone, only on shared point of views and shared values with others.
Right, thank you very much, and very clearly put. So the debate is on, because I'm sure there will be some who will find that Germany's leadership is reluctant, is somehow not reluctant. I remember, of course, it's partly the system. A wonderful day in Brussels in the 1980s, when I had just arrived as the Financial Times correspondent, and I went to see the German permanent representative there, who I will not identify, and I said, Herr Botschafter, I've got great difficulty in understanding the German position on reform of the common agricultural policy. Could you explain it to me? And he looked at me and he said, Herr Peel, I have great difficulty in understanding the German government policy on the common agricultural policy because I get different instructions from every ministry that I talk to. The agriculture ministry here, the finance ministry there, and the foreign ministry at the end of the day. And that, of course, is one of the difficult things about Germany. It's not always quite as clearly on message as I think you would like to be. Now, I'm going to turn to France. Ambassador Bujon, you have observed this relationship for a long time. When I was in Bonn in the early 1990s, one of your former colleagues then, François, was the French ambassador, and he wrote a rather famous article in the Frankfurter Allgemeine under the byline Anonymous. He was anonymous for not very long. What he actually said was German unification has fundamentally changed this Franco-German partnership. That it'll never be the same again because Germany is now going to be far more self-confident, far more conscious of its sovereignty and conscious of its national interest. Do you think that that Franco-German relationship, so key to what Michael said about Germany never wanting to lead alone, has it fundamentally changed since unification?
The answer is no, but I will elaborate on that. But before I do that, let me just say that how grateful I am to Kadri for having invited me again to the Lennart Meri conference. But I would like to have a private conversation with her later on to know why she labeled Europe as a lost continent. I had never thought of Estonia as being the tip of an iceberg that would be underwater. Let me come back to the position of Germany in France in Europe as seen from France. First, Germany has always been central to Europe. There is no question about it. If you believe, like Napoleon used to, that the countries have the politics of their geography, the geography of Germany, of course, puts it at the center of Europe. She touches east and west, north and south, and she is completely central. But more than that, she has been historically central to the whole history of European construction. It is around French-German reconciliation that the whole thing really started and developed. From the Schuman famous declaration on the 9th of May 1950 on to the Treaty of Rome and then to the other treaties, it is always around this idea of reconciliation and partnership between the two countries that the whole story has developed. Now, when Germany got reunified, of course, when the wall fell down, it certainly reshuffled the cards in the sense that all of a sudden Germany appeared that it was a giant of 85 million people in the making and that the whole cards would be redistributed, really reshuffled. And it is true that the German reunification has been a fantastic success story. Germany in itself, even before the wall fell down, was a success story because reconstruction after the war, the construction of the new German economy, the way Germany joined NATO and the European Union, all of that was a success story embodied in the Deutschmark. That was really the symbol of that success. But reunification itself has been a fantastic success. When you think, and that in 1985 you would have asked this distinguished audience, is it conceivable that Germany be reunified within NATO in 5 years' time? Nobody would have believed you, of course. Everybody would have said, no, the odds are completely against. So that in itself is already miraculous. But the fact that West Germany put 1% of the German GDP into the reconstruction of the Eastern Länder, that it spent about I know that the figures differ, but about 65 billion euros a year in 20 years to bring the Eastern lenders to level without too much deficit spending and without leaving a dreadful debt to the generations to come is in itself a fantastic success. So, of course, François Cher was right in that sense. Germany certainly built a formidable economic powerhouse, and it is a powerhouse that continues being successful because, and I say this as a Frenchman because France does not have the same assets in hand, I envy Germany for having the degree of political and social consensus that they enjoy, and that has allowed it to prosper the way it has. Yet, I believe Germany remains rather shy about leadership, and it has been consistently, I think, through World War II. It is, of course, because of history, because of World War II, but also because of hyperinflation and unemployment in the late 20s and early 30s. Germany is soft on defense. It spends only 1.3% of its GDP on defense. It is very reluctant to participate in military interventions abroad. It has little taste for foreign intervention. Together with France, it stayed away, of course, from the US invasion of Iraq in 2003, but we all have also in mind the way Germany opted out of the intervention in Libya in 2011. Even for peacekeeping, Germany is relatively shy. There are only two exceptions, I believe, Kosovo and Afghanistan, where the Bundeswehr is playing an important role. But I think the main reason why Germany is shy about leadership is because of what I would call its postmodern aspirations. Post-World War II, post-Cold War, in a post-tragic world, Germany is environment conscious. This is the first country in Europe where the Greens, the Grünen, played a very important political role. It is relatively anti-nuclear, and we have seen that with the decision to shut down the nuclear facilities. And it has also pacifist aspirations. So Germany, in that sense, in this post-tragic world, is a postmodern country who has aspirations that differ from traditional powers like the UK or France. And I find this very interesting. It leads, I believe, some of the aspirations of the European Union member towards what I call Helvetization. In the days of the Cold War, we were all threatened by Finlandization. And what now threatens us is aspirations to be a big Switzerland, multicultural, multilingual, vaguely armed, but basically pacifist, and certainly neutral. So that's the embodiment, I think, of these aspirations, that dream. So whatever leadership Germany is disposed to show, it does it in two ways. First, it shows leadership in the economic and financial sphere, clearly. This is the area of excellence of the new Germany. And because the Deutschmark, the success story, was traded, if I may say so, into the euro, Germany considers that it has a leadership role in leading the Eurozone, which is entirely justified. The Bundesbank was also the inspiration for the European Central Bank, and that is how this aspiration to leadership in the financial sphere translates. Now, Germany promotes monetary and financial orthodoxy, which in a way is very, very good. It is inherited from Germany's own post-World War II experience, fighting inflation, fighting unemployment, guaranteeing the stability of the currency is the mission number one, of course, of the ECB, after it was that of the Bundesbank. But there is some rigidity, we'll come back to that in the discussion, I'm sure, some inflexibility in the way Germany promotes these ideas, and that provokes a backlash in Europe for the moment. It is the main problem the Europeans have to fight. And the second way Germany is showing leadership is through partnership, as you said, through partnership with France in particular. It all started, of course, in the 50s. The perfect symbol of that is both the de Gaulle-Adenauer extraordinary relationship, two great men who really started this trend. Everybody remembers this picture of President Mitterrand and Chancellor Kohl holding hands at Verdun. This is also a powerful symbol, but through the changes in government and changes of majority in the two countries, that relationship has remained extremely vibrant, extremely alive, and rather successful. We now have a change of government in France.
That's what I wanted to put you.
Yes.
Is it going to upset the relationship?
It will certainly alter the relationship because we don't know how things will develop. Don't forget that President-elect Hollande has been elected, but he's not yet been inaugurated. But it is very symbolic also. He will be inaugurated on Tuesday morning, the 15th of May, and on the afternoon he will board a government plane, and go straight to Berlin to have a working dinner with Chancellor Merkel, exactly as Nicolas Sarkozy did 5 years ago.
Shall I tell you, there'll be one thing better than about the dinner with Nicolas Sarkozy, and that'll be, I hope that Monsieur Hollande will drink a glass of wine, because I believe the Chancellor found it very frustrating that Mr. Sarkozy was teetotaler.
Mr. Sarkozy is a teetotaler, and President Chirac was always refusing wine and asking for a beer. I don't know about François Hollande. We will see and we will see how much the partnership changes. But if you look at the past to guide us for the future, we had all kinds of configurations. For instance, Chancellor Schmidt, who was, of course, a social democrat, was great partners with President Giscard d'Estaing, coming from the liberal right, and President Chirac also had a very good dialogue with Chancellor Schröder in the 2000s. So we will see how this develops, but there is no question that the French, although the new president has certain aspirations that he has spelled out during the campaign at renegotiating the Treaty on Monetary Stability, will want to maintain the French and German partnership as being really the main support of the European construction. And let me just add a final word on this, which is that the French-German partnership worked very well in the workings of the European Union when the Commission was the dominant factor. But in the Eurozone, where you have a greater dose of intergovernmental relations than of supranationality, this role of the French-German partnership is even more essential than it was in the regular dealings of the Commission and of the European Union institutions. I'll stop at that for the moment.
Okay, super. And thank you very much. A very good view, I think, of the relationship. But I want the gloves to be taken off. Everybody's being just a little bit too nice at the moment. Because I think there are some real problems in here in the relationship. So I'm going to turn to Uffe Ellemann-Jensen as that small and prickly neighbour to the north of Germany, one of Germany's many neighbours. Uffe, what actually really irritates you about German leadership?
What irritates me is the sad fact that Europe might be a lost continent without leadership, and that the German leadership is so reluctant. Remember a couple of years ago when Bob Selig, still president of the World Bank, said that the global financial crisis has led to a tectonic change in global power. Beautiful picture. In particular, when you had the outbreak of Eyjafjallajökull, we saw what tectonic changes really meant. Well, but what the financial crisis has done to Europe is to bring a teutonic change in European power. And the Germans have been so bloody reluctant about it. I can well understand them, because when they finally take leadership, they are being harassed. Look at all the foghorns in the Anglo-Saxon press, for instance. Present company certainly excluded. But what you read there, what you heard in the French campaign, well, not to mention what you heard in the recent Greek election campaign, I can well understand the Germans that when they finally pick up the mantle and take leadership, they are victims of harassment. But don't whine about that. That comes with picking up that role. We need German leadership today, and hopefully we will see it on Tuesday, because it's also a fact that the sooner President-elect Hollande forgets all about his many campaign promises, the sooner can we get in line again. Well, that this should come from such a small neighbor might surprise you, but I feel like I think the Polish foreign minister felt Sikorski when he last year said, well, I don't fear German power, I fear German inactivity. I can well understand the role Germany feels is put upon Germany, because we all tend to forget that the creation of the euro happened against the wish of most Germans. It was a political decision. It was an offer to the rest of Europe, given and carried through against the distinct wishes of the German financial community. Germany had to give up the euro, and they sacrificed it in order to create a stronger European cohesion. And therefore it's very irritating to hear people talking about losing sovereignty in connection with the creation of the euro. Those who gave up sovereignty were the Germans. I'm sure the Germans still remember that. The rest of us have forgotten it. But Germany, of course, also had some benefits from the creation of the euro, because Germany dealt with the euro in the way the euro should be dealt with. Though it should not be forgotten that those two countries who most demonstrably acted against the original Stability Pact were France and Germany. You started a movement there that was then followed by others with disastrous results. So you carry a lot of responsibility there. But Germany's role today is to lead the way when it comes to follow a policy of austerity. And it is, as it was demonstrated at one of the debates yesterday, it is absolutely nonsense to claim that we have a choice in Europe between austerity and growth. These two things can be combined and should be combined. And when I talk about foghorns in the Anglo-Saxon press, one of the worst is this Nobel laureate Paul Krugman, who praised the voters of France and Greece recently in one of his columns that is widely distributed in the European press as well, claiming that now finally Europe could start getting back on track with regard to creating growth. Well, if I remember correctly, Krugman got his Nobel Prize for some trade theories, and to elevate him to the level of guru on macroeconomics would be the same as if you took a pediatric doctor and made him an expert in open heart surgery. But this is the kind of stuff the Germans have to deal with. And you have to be patient about it, Michael, and keep doing the good job, because we need German leadership in order to avoid Europe becoming a lost continent. But of course, as it was said, you have to do it in the usual elegant way. You also have to find a balance. For instance, when You talk about the measures that has to be dealt with, and all the sanctions that should be imposed to those who break the rules. These sanctions should not just be to countries who are in deficit, but also to countries who are in surplus. And I'm sure you know which country I'm thinking about. So my final words to the German reluctant leadership is, keep up the good work and continue to lead in a way where you tell others either you lead, you follow, or you get out of the way.
Thanks, Uffe, very much. Thank you for that. I think you kept the gloves on, but you landed a couple of punches. And I want to turn now to Paweł. And Paweł, with a risk of actually throwing you in a direction that you may not have expected, let me put it like this. It was your foreign minister who Uffe's just quoted saying, we fear German inaction more than German action. When it comes to relations with Russia, don't you feel that actually Germany should be giving a much clearer leadership to Europe and actually is all the time just saying, let's disturb this relationship? What I felt last night at our very interesting discussions about Russia was, where the hell is Europe? There was talk about where America was, Magnitsky, but there was nothing about a European attitude towards Russia. And I think one of the problems is perhaps that Germany is a dead weight in pulling European policy into inaction on Russia. Is that a problem from your perspective?
Very interesting question, Quentin. Now, Poland and Germany are currently in bed together, which is an unusual historical position. So one has to be careful. But there was an ECFR report on Russia a few years ago, which puts countries into 5 categories, and Poland was famously put into the category of new Cold Warriors. Now, we have since aligned to the European median. There isn't such a sharp division among EU member states on Russia any longer. I'm asking myself whether this is with a benefit for EU's Russia policy, or whether having a spectrum of views and also quite bitter differences among us would not produce at this juncture a more effective policy towards Russia. But I think you put your finger on a very important phenomenon in Europe at the moment, which is that we have the euro crisis and we have all the rest. Now, our energy, our focus has been totally consumed by the crisis in the Eurozone. I remember Alain Mank put it very interestingly when he said there are 2 negotiating tables. There is the economic table, and this is the German table. And there is the military, strategic, diplomatic table. That's obviously the French table. And he said Germany was not interested in sitting at the second table. All it's interested in is economics. And that, he said, produces a balanced relationship. Well, I think it produces an unbalanced relationship because you cannot have one with the other. Let me have a short stint at how reluctant Germany is as a leader, because I think there are 4 reasons to explain that, and we should really look back at least 20 years to understand where Germany stands at the moment. And issue number 1 for me is German reunification, which consumed a lot of money, but consumed a lot of energy. But it also shaped up the German view about how to get out of a crisis. There is quite a strong feeling among the German policymakers, opinion makers, which basically says that the moral hazard risk was exposed with a vengeance in the case of German reunification, which was a painful, long-lasting process. Things took ages to pick up. And I think the importance that Germany now attaches to the moral hazard issue was shaped up in that period. The second factor is the adjustment. Europe, Germany and the rest of Europe are simply out of cycle. Germany had a very good run in the in the first half of the 1990s. Then in 95 it started adjusting, while the rest of Europe started a big fiesta. So when the current crisis came, Germany was relatively well prepared, while the others were not. Which doesn't mean that everything works perfectly well in Germany. I think we should stress that as well. There are lots of problems you could list when it comes to the German economy. The services sector, the retail sector, the rising energy prices, the demographic situation. I think when you look at all that, what it tells me is that this is probably a one-off opportunity for German leadership, that Germany might not be our leader for that much longer if we look a couple of decades down the road. Now, issue number 3 is enlargement, because Germany took enlargement seriously compared to some other countries. And it used enlargement as a way to prepare for globalization. Central Europe became the outsourcing hub for German industry. And when you look at last year's figures of how much the exports to Germany from Poland, from the Czech Republic, from Slovakia rose, you see figures in double digits, 20, 30%. When you look at Ireland's exports to Germany, it's -1%, -2%. This explains to a large extent, I think, the German thinking as well. And finally, there was a distraction. There was the constitutional treaty in between, which was very much a German project, which did not address the real, as we know today, the real issues and the real problems in Europe's economy. So I think for these 4 reasons, I think we understand better why Germany is a reluctant leader. And this is what explains the trial and error, or trial and terror, as some people would prefer to say, way of proceeding in this crisis. To my mind, distrust is the crucial factor. One politician in Germany put it to me a few weeks ago. You know what killed the Eurobonds in the German debate? It was Berlusconi's U-turn on reforms, and it was Papandreou's sudden referendum announcement. That sent a shockwave through the system because it told the Germans you basically could not trust these people down in the south. So that issue of distrust is fundamental, and the solution to it needs to be found on both sides of the border. I mean, what is worrying about the current situation is that there is an interstate logic to it. So there is Germany, there is Greece, there is this little political discussion, there is an interstate negotiation, and we have these national boundaries re-emerging. In the banking sector, it's most clear, and without addressing it, the solution to the crisis will not be found. So the question I'm asking myself is whether a big bargain is possible. And I think determination in Germany to solve the crisis is quite clear, although it hasn't been put to the test yet. German officials are quite eager listing how many billions of euros Germany is putting forward in guarantees, but very little has actually been spent from that basket towards the crisis. So we don't really know what the determination is, but I think it's strong. Now, the main method is a method in which you arrive at genetically modified Greeks. The method of genetically modifying Greeks, Italians, and Spaniards into Germans is the dominant method. Now, it's an interesting approach, but whether it can work successfully remains to be seen. There will be some recalibration after Hollande is sworn in when it comes to growth, but not more than that, because the big brother is watching, and the big brother is not Berlin, it's the financial markets. And the one problem with the financial markets is that they are anonymous. The Henry Kissinger question, whom do you call when you want to speak to Europe, applies with a vengeance to the financial markets. Whom do you call to get their position clear? So the key question is addressing the structural deficiencies of the Eurozone. And there is too little and too late at the moment. There is an emphasis on the fiscal union, but it's not a fiscal union as such. It's a method of coordination, which is the old method now pursued with a lot of consistency and determination. But it's giving constraints, it's not really giving very strong incentives. So to finish, I think we should be careful about Germany bashing for the reason that Uffe mentioned. Germany was not only a reluctant leader, it was quite reluctant walking into the euro. A lot of people expected that there would be anti-European parties in Germany at that time because the sentiment was so strong. Well, we don't have anti-European parties in Germany. We have a big pro-European coalition. I think we should appreciate it. The long-term meaning of the euro, to my mind, is crucial. I mean, the question what is the euro needed for is fundamental. And of course, a lot of people say we need to save the euro to avoid a disaster. That's one way of looking at it. But I think we need to really construct a different logic in which we identify the euro as a bridge to a different future. It's a bridge to a future in which sustainability will be the name of the game, in which there will be a different socioeconomic model, but also in which Europe will be a competitor on the global scene, and the euro will be a global currency. I think it's only when we answer that question that we will find some solutions to the issue of German leadership in Europe.
Okay, Paweł, thank you very much. I'm going to give Michael a chance to respond, and then I'm going to go to the audience. But Michael, I think, to me, well, many interesting points emerge, but one, there is a worry about the reluctance and not about the leadership. Germany wants more Europe, and we actually want a bit more Germany. So that's the first question. Second, let me put Paweł's suggestion there to you. Do you actually want to genetically change Southern Europe so they all become Germans? And if so, how the hell do you expect to do it? And then, may I just put to you, if you'd answer, put your FDP hat on for a moment. Because what Paweł just said, there are no anti-European parties in Germany. Well, there are the Linke, but they're not serious. And there are the Pirates, and we don't know where the hell they're going. But your party was the one which has had actually a battle for its soul over whether it should become more Eurosceptic. And the party leadership, your side of the party, has won in maintaining the FDP as a pro-European party. And perhaps you could just tell us why. Because electoral logic might have suggested you should become Eurosceptic.
Well, the last question, that is really about genetics. It is in the genes of FDP to be pro-integration and pro-Europe. And some people in the party indeed wanted to change the compass of the party. So that was a critical moment, frankly speaking, very frankly speaking. That was a critical moment for my party, because after entering government, we fell down in the polls, and there has been the temptation of some I would not even say right-wingers, but economic hardliners, of course, to try to maneuver us in a position where we can profit from the concerns in the population because of inflation danger and the debt crisis, which they call a euro crisis. I still think it's not a euro crisis. It's a crisis partly of institutions and especially a debt crisis, because without all that enormous public debt, we wouldn't be in that trouble. So therefore, of course, it's very important to bring back that persistent and constant politics of indebtedness, and that is what we want to change together with others, not the genes of Greeks, Italians, Spaniards, Portuguese. By the way, we wouldn't have a place to go in holiday if they would be Germans. it's absolutely important, of course, that everybody is completely clear about that Europe is not about having different ways of thinking, but when we have a common currency, then of course it's absolutely mandatory also to have a common way how to make a budget, for example, how to make a sustainable budget, how to plan your expenses. Therefore, we Germans insisted on leadership for the European Commission to have a say with the European semester. We are speaking in favor of a stronger Commission. And sometimes Sarkozy, now I can speak about that open, of course. The French have been very reluctant to give more power to the Commission, especially Sarkozy government. So therefore, we want strong institutions who are able really then to govern then the institutions of the Eurozone. In this case, I think we are very not reluctant, that's clear, but I think we are even in the avant-garde in this way of having stronger European institutions. But of course, we will not be in the avant-garde of having a mutualization of debt, because we think this would bring us exactly in the wrong way. Exactly in the wrong way. It would even make things more difficult, because let's be serious. We are here in Estonia, but you can also look to Latvia, Lithuania, Slovakia, etc., etc. What else do we expect from Greece, Portugal, Spain to do than when we have what we have expected to do from countries like Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Slovakia, etc. after '89? When Greece joined the EU in '81, they did not have to adapt to anything. Of course, it was not the EU. We still haven't been there. But please, don't let us forget, these countries today, Greece, Portugal, Spain, they need our solidarity, yes. But having said that, they also have to make, at a very late point, to finally to do what has been mastered in a very successful way and in a very harmful way by the other members who joined the EU in 2004 and 2007. So it is a very late moment to do that, but finally they have to do it, and we cannot go the way for them.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I have a question here from Anders Åslund, who is going to be the 21st century Gustavus Adolphus. I must warn you, Anders, that Michael Link is from Baden-Württemberg, and as you know what they say to the children in Baden-Württemberg, if you're naughty, the Swedes will get you.
I know.
I'm Lutheran.
Anders Åslund,
You were on his side.
Peterson Institute for International Economics. I would like to follow up on Uffe Ellemann-Jensen's last point. Either you lead or you get out of the way. I'm currently very much on the German position, but I don't like how Germany has got into this position. In a crisis, time is money, and a lot of time has been wasted. And this is very much common for Germany and France. What have the positions been? No IMF program until 2 years ago, no bailout, and no bailout fund, too little money for the bailout fund. Germany has persistently led from behind, not led, that is. And at the same time brought up all kinds of diversionary issues, hedge funds regulation, financial transaction tax, you name it. And what is the problem? Germany has not had a crisis, and it still doesn't have a crisis. You can see lots of good crisis politicians in Northern and Eastern Europe. There should have been other Europeans with a crisis experience that have should taken the lead. Where do you find them? For example, in the European Commission. I appreciated your words about France not supporting the European Commission's powers. Germany is not really either, and of course not the UK. These have been the three blockages against a reasonable European system. What we do need is a stronger European Commission. We had Olli Rehn here yesterday. I would have been felt much better if he had led the charge fully himself, rather than Madame Merkel and President Sarkozy. Thank you.
Anders, give the microphone right behind you. Yeah?
Thank you. François from France. It's absolutely nice. It's wonderful to hear that what we need is a combination of fiscal consolidation and growth. Problem is, what kind of measure can you take right now in order to reach for those two goals at the same time? Because I think there is a basic misunderstanding, which is to say for some people, first fiscal consolidation and then growth. And others say we need right now some growth and we will adjust the fiscal consolidation. So my question is, how do you combine the two elements at the same time?
Okay, and one more question here in the front. And then I'll come to the left-hand side afterwards.
Thank you. Tomasz Walaszek with the Center for European Reform in London. Very much on the same subject. On a recent visit to Germany, I found both a new receptiveness to growth measures. Paweł talked about it a little bit. But the German idea of growth seems to be something, growth measures seem to be something that's added on top of austerity measures, like sort of sugar sprinkled on a pizza, with no notion that some of the growth measures may be contradictory and mutually exclusive with austerity, that austerity itself may be impinging growth in parts of Central Europe. When you look at the plans for the banks to retrench and to cut their lending, which are expected to hit Central Europe particularly hard, it's hard not to conclude that the austerity program itself is crimping growth. So does the new openness and reception to growth, does it include in Germany a willingness to also revisit parts of the austerity package? Or is it, again, is growth simply something that you do on top of the austerity package with no change to the latter?
Okay, thanks very much. Now, the logic is to come to Mikhail, but I won't. Ambassador, I'm going to come to you first, because there's also an accusation that it is too little, too late. And it's been the Franco-German partnership that's been too little, too late. How would you answer that charge?
I think the charge may be justified. Too little, too late, I don't know. Too late, probably. Too little, I don't know. Too late, possibly, because it took a very long time to really take the measure of the crisis within the Eurozone and to devise certainly at least the firewalls that would allow the Eurozone to reform, to do the necessary adjustments. It took a long time, but this is a new experience, actually. When the United States, we've been lectured many times by the Americans about the so-called Hamilton moment, which is the time when Alexander Hamilton eventually decided that the 13 struggling colonies should mutualize their debt, and then they mutualized their tax. This is what led to their monetary union. We are being constantly lectured by the Americans about that. It took them some time also, and it was 2 centuries ago. The euro is a recent creation. It had been untested until really 2008, and it took a long time, first to take the measure of the depth of the crisis, secondly, to take the measure of the attacks against some of the sovereign debts that were of course causing the crisis, and to erect the firewalls, to create the European Financial Stability Fund, then to decide when we would put the European Monetary Fund online, how we would combine with the IMF. So too late, possibly. Was it possible to do it otherwise? Would you have expected the French and the German government, and of course all of the others, to come immediately with a ready-made solution to a crisis that had never happened before? I think the accusation is a little unfair. It took time, I agree. But I don't think it was too little and too late, although we do have gaps to plug that are very, very difficult. We have an enormous crisis with Greece, which is still unresolved, of course, and that will certainly get worse in the next few weeks. We have to decide what the Greeks want to do, and then we have to face the problem with Spain. We're not out of the woods yet.
We have to decide what the Greeks want to do and then tell them they can't
it's it's for the Greeks. It's for the Greeks to decide what they want to do. I think it's different, but we certainly will be again learning by experience in the next few months. What is important is to maintain the cohesion of the Eurozone, and this is where we may have a problem, because too much inflexibility is creating political problems. We've seen the results of the elections in Greece with the two extreme parties, the two extreme wings winning the day. And in France, we've seen in the presidential election the effects of what was called Merkozy. In the French vernacular, Merkozy describes the unlikely alliance of Chancellor Merkel and President Sarkozy in promoting too much austerity and not focusing on growth. And the fact that, for instance, President Sarkozy turned down the offer of Chancellor Merkel to come and attend one of his electoral meetings is extremely interesting, because I think he's realized that the sort of Merkozy syndrome was becoming harmful. So we are now at a moment of truth. Will we really be able to add some stimulus to growth to the austerity measures that have been adopted? I think the Germans have made it very clear that it was out of the question to renegotiate the treaty that was just concluded. But the question that is in front of us is, what kind of growth plan, stimulus, can we promote? And there you have many other leaders like Mario Monti in Italy or Mariano Rajoy in Spain who are also claiming for some stimulus to growth. The problem is, what kind of stimulus?
Let's put that straight to Mikael.
Yeah.
What kind of stimulus can we hope for?
Very clearly put to life, or bring to life, all the sleeping beauties we have. We have a lot of sleeping beauties which we can use in order to promote growth. Let's take the EIB, for example, the European Investment Bank. Right now, Germany is, among others, leading also a call, in this case, of course, also to increasing the role of the EIB, give it more capital so that it can act on the market, etc. One thing. That is something which can work perfectly at the same time with measures of bringing budgets back to order and have sustainable budgets.
Does that mean sort of big infrastructure spending, building motorways in Spain that are twice as large as they need?
Oh, my goodness, not of course. Another highway next to the existing ones, which are empty sometimes anywhere. Yeah. Anyway, but no. The question is, it has to be intelligent spending. We have forwarded together with Finland, the Netherlands, Italy, the outgoing French government, Austria, Sweden, and also with a lot of support by Denmark, we have proposed a plan for better spending. And that is the next sleeping beauty we have. We have an EU budget with enormous amount of unspent money, which has been programmed long ago, but which is basically not used or sometimes even misused in the past. So let's be serious and get tough on that. And I think that is one of the jobs to do next week on Tuesday, beginning with that lunch, be it wine or sparkling water, we will see. But in the end, of course, I think it is a good preparation for the dinner of Herman Van Rompuy on May 23rd. So we have a lot of things we can do right now. And at the same time, therefore, the gentleman from France, he rightly asked, of course, how can that work at the same time? It can work at the same time, of course, if you do it right now. And it is not a contradiction. But, of course, fiscal stability and sustainable budgets, that is really a precondition to make sure that this will not repeat. You will not hear the word austerity from me, because austerity, that would mean only cutting the budget and doing nothing for growth. That was never the German line, and even before the French elections, it was not the German line. We were speaking and putting forward our proposal for better spending very early, and even in the beginning of our government, we had to fight a very, very tough fight against representatives of our farmers and our Länder, that the structural funds and the agriculture funds should be put to the service of more growth. So it is a permanent thing, but step by step, of course, we Germans see that it's our job to better communicate our position, to speak more about what we are doing, to speak more about what we are standing for, because we don't have the impression to be reluctant. We don't have the impression to be passive. We even have the impression in many areas to lead. So let's do that in a clearer way. And here, in the growth area, we are also ready to lead together with others, but not, Quentin, not. And here is the dissent with Monsieur Hollande. Not by raising the debt, not by having expensive new programs with fresh money. That is a no-go for us, as well as the renegotiation of the fiscal compact.
Okay. I have this wonderful image, don't you, of Michael Link hacking his way through the thorns to kiss that sleeping beauty. Is the sleeping beauty called Werner Hoyer by any chance? Anyway,
he's the right man at the right place.
Yes. Mikhail's predecessor, now in charge of the EIB. Right, questions on the left-hand side of the House. Who's got the microphone first? There at the back. Come on, Steve.
Thank you,
Go
Steve
for it.
Erlanger from the New York Times. First, Mikhail, I'm very glad the FDP has picked its nose up above the water last Sunday and may survive. We'll see.
Thank you.
Congratulations for that. I think you're right. There hasn't been a reluctance to lead. I think Germany has been leading. The fact is a lot of people don't like the way it's been leading or the way it's been pushing the rest of Europe. That's a whole different question. I see no reluctance, in fact. I mean, I see very little interest on the part of Germany in hearing other people. And this is what I wanted to ask you, because it seems to me the German prescription is for a different disease. Everyone talks about Greece, which is sui generis, and I agree is a problem and is a mess, and I have no solution for it. But Spain did not have a debt problem, and Ireland did not have a debt problem, and yet the recipe is the same. I hear nothing from Germany about really changing the structural problem of imbalances in the Eurozone. Nothing. I hear nothing really from Germany saying how good it has been for Germany to be in this Eurozone where you sell so many goods. I also hear nothing about the bank crisis. Germany has a major banking crisis. And one of the reasons you do what you do is to protect your own banks. So let's talk about some of those issues too, please. Thank you.
Okay, too much Germany, not too little. Can we have the microphone over this side? Here. There we go.
Thank you very much. I'm George Chaplin, MEP for Hungary, and I'd like to put an EU question. Now, you spoke of transferring more power to the Commission. And my question is this: where is the legitimacy to come from? Lisbon was supposed to solve this problem, but I think it has not been altogether successful. And I cannot see the member states being ready to transfer legitimacy together with the power they're transferring to Brussels. The Karlsruhe court, I think, has already made it very clear that there are limits to this. Now, what concerns me is that in the 2014 elections, there could very easily be a blocking minority of Eurosceptics in the European Parliament, which would create havoc. So my question is this: if there is to be a convention supposedly in 2015, 2016, how will this problem be addressed, and what will the German or indeed French or Danish or Polish position on those issues be?
Thanks very much. And just in front to Anton. No, Anton. Can you pass it in front? Sorry.
Thank you, Anton LaGuardia of The Economist. I'd just like to ask you about a couple of other sleeping beauties and possibly about a wicked witch. One is the fact that it's plain that the structure of the euro, the architecture of the euro, is unstable. So it may be about national debt, but it's also about the structure of the euro. The aggregate debt and deficit figures for Europe are comparable to the US, yet the eurozone is in trouble, or parts of it is in deep trouble. What does the eurozone look like to you in 5-10 years' time, as opposed to immediately? Secondly, we hear very little about the single market. which is still regarded, we heard Olli Rehn saying it's the engine for growth. And there we do have a partial German blockage on the question of liberalization of services. As a liberal party, do you see Germany ever liberalizing its services industry? Finally, I'd like to hear a little bit about we've heard it from Paweł on the question of sort of asymmetric adjustment. At the moment, the adjustment has been almost entirely on the side of the deficit countries. What should the surplus countries be doing? Can they help? We've started to hear interesting things from the Bundesbank, possibly from Wolfgang Schäuble, about allowing wages to rise in Germany. How far do you think adjustment on the German side and of the surplus countries can go? Thank you.
And then, yes, just behind you.
Eugen Smart from Warsaw. Hi, Mark. Congratulations on your stability, let's say, political stability. Now, I have a question. There is an element of leading by default, that when Germany makes some decisions in its own self-interest and it influences everybody else. The example is, and it's something that has to do with Russia, it's energy. A decision to abandon the nuclear energy was made in Germany for reasons which many could not comprehend in such a radical manner. It's out of step with France, which relies so much on nuclear energy. It's out of step with other elements of energy mix in Europe. And it is difficult to imagine leadership of Germany in this respect, crucial respect, if it doesn't look at least regionally, if not Europe-wise. This is one of the crucial. It's a problem of future competitiveness of German economy, but also of French economy, Dutch economy, Polish economy, etc. We need here more debate and more decision-taking together. The other element which surprises us tremendously is we've been accused in Poland of being over-emotional over our Eastern, for example, partners promoting Ukraine. What we have seen in Germany lately about Ukraine is something which you never saw probably in Poland in the last 20 years. And this is also some kind of a leadership. Even Austria, which was not known for its great interest in human rights protection, started to cry about banning Ukraine from every institution we could imagine. Could you? So my question is: Germany, Sleeping Beauty, leading by default, making decision on its own without regard, without consultation, and without regard of what others might have to say on the matter.
Right, okay. Now, again, I'm not going to put Mikael on the spot straight away. I want to come to Uffe first, because Uffe, I think you could engage also with Steve Erlanger's question, saying, actually, the medicine is wrong. Let's face that. It's not just that we want Germany to be clearer about its medicine. The medicine isn't right for everybody. Now, you were defending the fiscal consolidation and then growth sort of balance. But is it possible that in this really very diffuse Eurozone, we're too inflexible? The ambassador raised the point earlier as well. What do you think?
Well, I think it was unfair to claim that Germany has not asked for the kind of reforms that are necessary to have the Eurozone work. Because what is needed in countries like Spain, France, Greece, etc., are deep reforms of the labor market, of pension systems, social systems, etc. That is needed. But that also has to do with the kind of fiscal consolidation that we are asking for. And therefore, let's be clear about it. There's a very, very limited room for growth initiatives until you have created the fiscal stabilization. That's necessary. And that's why we have to hope that Tuesday's meeting will lead to a lot of window dressing, because Hollande is probably going to need that up to the parliamentary elections, but window dressings without too much content. But could I just also make a remark on energy policy? Because this has to do with what Paweł elegantly sidestepped away from. That is Germany's lack of policy vis-à-vis Russia. Why is it that Europe do not have a common energy policy today? Oh, come on, we know the answer. The Germans, the French, and other big countries prefer to deal with Russia in a bilateral way. And this is why you have this stupid investment called Nord Stream on the bottom of the Baltic Sea going here. It would be tempting to say some nasty words about German ex-politicians in this connection, but since
very pleased with themselves in the front row of Mr. Putin's inauguration.
Yes, since he was there too. Yes, well. Guido Westerwelle was told by the court, I think in Bremen, that he was not allowed to call that political what was it called? But, well, he also got a court order stating that it was not allowed to say that he colored his hair. So instead of talking about this special way of being paid by the Gazprom, I just state that I still believe he's coloring his hair. But this is where the Germans simply are not behaving like a big country, preferring to deal with Russia in this bilateral way, allowing a situation to occur where, for instance, the Baltic countries run the risk of becoming an energy island on the European continent. So you have to grow up there.
All right. Paweł, I want to come to you. I don't know, I would like to pick up on Gary Schöpflin's comment about where is the legitimacy of the more Europe, because this is a very important part of Germany's message to the rest of its partners now. We want to move towards more Europe. Is there a legitimacy to that path?
But I think the idea is for everyone to cater for the legitimacy of that process largely by themselves. That's the German method, giving more powers to the Bundestag. The powers which have been taken up, in fact. We have now very lively debates in the Bundestag about the crisis. The Constitutional Court in Germany has been a major actor in democratization of the European debate. So Germany has done it. The question is if other countries are also going down that road. I don't think we will have a major new set of legitimacy enhancing measures at the European level. It's more for the member states to fill that gap. To Uffe's question and comments on energy, I think the view at the Federal Chancellery is now that the euro problem has been sorted for the moment. Issues have been addressed, whatever we think about it. And now the next big project is energy. So Madam Merkel has called on the energy executives again to discuss energy policy, and I think Germany will burn its fingers into a European energy policy, because the decision on the closure of nuclear power plants is having repercussions when it comes to the prices of energy, and the German industry is beginning to give the government quite a bit of heat, and I think that will translate into more openness when it comes to European energy policy. And final comment on Steve's remarks about how unbalanced the situation is, because we have all eyes focused on Germany, but there hasn't been much of a rise of the rest. The others have not been sufficiently active. They have been paralyzed by the situation. We have a discussion about the imbalances. We know that Germany should be spending more, but how exactly should that happen? There has been very little thinking about that. In fact, there are reports which show that if Germany increases its consumption, it will not be money spent in Southern Europe. It will be money spent on the global markets. So how exactly is that design to be played out remains the question.
Good, thank you, Paweł. Mikhail.
3 parts. First on institutions and legitimacy of more Europe. And then, of course, again on the growth topic. And some personal remarks in the end, because energy, that will be with the FDP hat.
You'll get this wonderful mixed message from Germany now, the side that didn't like the nuclear.
Well, thanks God we have a coalition government. So in case of institutions, the gentleman from Sweden as well as the gentleman from Hungary, you were basically both having institutional aspects. Very clearly, again, to make it crystal clear, when we speak about political union, more Europe, we don't speak about centralization. That is not the intention. The intention is, of course, to strengthen the existing institutions and because a commission without a strong say in equal implementation of the acquis in all member states, be they new, be they founding members. I think that is really a question of self-esteem for the EU, because, frankly speaking, there have been sometimes some German governments, of course, where, especially after 2004, it was chic to go together, French and Germans, to go to new member countries and to tell them how to behave. That is over very clearly, and Chancellor Merkel and Foreign Minister Westerwelle have made it absolutely clear that the EU is a union of equals, or it is not a union. So therefore, of course, we need equal implementation of the acquis. Equal implementation needs a strong commission, very clearly. Of course, that is something which is being signed by a lot of people. When it gets concrete, you will have a lot of resistance. Look to the Schengen agenda. Therefore, we want a strong role for the Commission, because we see, especially in the Foreign Office in Germany, we see that with the Lisbon Treaty, we have a strengthening of the intergovernmental aspect with the frequent summits of the European Council. I don't speak about the official ones, I speak about the unofficial ones, the unofficial European Council. So we should tackle that problem, because the heads of government, they cannot solve everything alone. Then, of course, again, we had from Quentin and from Mr. LaGuardia and the gentleman from yes, okay, sorry. You were basically saying a little bit, well, that's nice, but it's not only a debt crisis. We have a lot of things to do also in other areas. You are fully right. Spain is not the same case as has been Portugal, Greece, etc. But nevertheless, of course, for example, in the case also of France, of course, we also have a problem of debt in the case of Italy as well. And what we are trying to do is, with these growth initiatives, also to offer something to countries like Spain, for example, which really would help them, of course, if we put together the existing things which we have to the service of growth, the EU structural funds, and, of course, single market initiatives, services directives. We are fighting, my party is fighting hardly for that, of course, but as you know, in a coalition government, of course, you have to go a long way. And Germany is not monolithic. And thanks God it is not monolithic. I think that is exactly the thing, the sort of Germany you wouldn't like to see. So we are fighting that. We are fighting on the open scene on that sometimes too open when it comes to energy policy. And here comes my FDP hat. Well, the North Stream pipeline, if FDP would have been in government like at that time, maybe would have taken a different direction, of course. Not direction where it will go, but different direction, of course, whether such a project, which is an exclusive idea in the beginning at least, an exclusive idea conceived in Moscow and then put into place with especially Chancellor Schröder, and we have to mention very clearly the name. In this case, I think that would have gone a different way, because it was exactly the opposite of how my party is thinking European politics. It was not inclusive. It was exclusive. Exclusive is not European. And what the last thing Germany should ever do again is speaking behind the back of the Poles, Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians, with Russia on issues concerning them. So very clearly, that is a principle right now of this government. But of course, we cannot undo everything. We're also not pretending to be the smartest ever, but at least we have one new principle, and that is don't speak behind the back of the other European partners and make bilateral agreements. In the case of energy, it will be difficult. We know that the way we have decided last year to quit nuclear was a difficult decision, not very well communicated, and under the pressure of the pictures also of Fukushima. But nevertheless, of course, right now, let's look forward. We are ready to come to a common European energy policy. We know that it will be a very, very hard way to go, but we are constantly reminded always by Commissioner Oettinger also that we need to go that way because going it alone in the energy issue is absolutely not an option.
Going it alone won't work. Look, I've got to wind up. It says 000 on the clock up there. But I have not given the floor to one questioner here in the front. Is there a microphone? I want Margarita Mathiopoulos to have the last word. One, we've had no lady in the debate. Two, Margarita, you're a German, but you have a Greek name, so
yes.
it's entirely appropriate.
And I survive.
You should have the last word.
Thank you, Quentin. This is another German and another FDP member and very active member, chairing also the Transatlantic Forum of the FDP, and having worked very closely, I'm very fond, Michael. We worked on various foreign policy and security issues in the last 10 years. I do worry about two aspects. As a German, as a European, as an Atlanticist, and as a liberal. And let me say, as an order liberal, we are in a crisis, and I very much subscribe to our model of fiscal discipline, which, honestly speaking, also we Germans have not always obeyed it. But let's leave that alone. Secondly, of course, low inflation. I saw in the last 2-3 years a real rift between the orthodox German philosophy of doing economic and financial policies versus the US model. And I think this is the real debate we have between Europe and the United States, in the sense that we in Germany have completely excluded to look during the crisis, to have more of a dose of the Anglo-Saxon solving solution in this crisis. And we have completely excluded that. And I must say, we are famous of being very afraid of inflation because of our historical experiences. But I think this is just something to hide and be reluctant, because why would a dose of 4 to 5% inflation not really help to reduce the debt? Or why haven't we from the very beginning, with our fiscal discipline and pushing that through, and I'm very much in favor of Mr. Merkel's fiscal pact, but it is not sufficient. What I worry is if the Eurozone collapses, which is in the cards. The Danish former foreign minister said those who will not obey should leave. This can very well happen. I'm a bit afraid, again, as a German, as a European, and as a liberal, and I don't want that we Germans get blamed and we liberals being in this coalition, that at the end, whether we are right or wrong, if Europe fails, it's also a German failure. And it's going to be and Europe is going to be losing globalization. So I think we should also think about what will happen if Europe fails and countries drop out of the Eurozone in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Well, it's a slightly chilling message. I think I take away from this debate a message that says we have got to pay more attention to each other's politics, This is one of the real lessons of this crisis. We've got to understand what's happening in everybody else's country. All domestic politics is now European politics, quite as all European politics is domestic politics. And it really brings it home to us, because the truth is, an awful lot of the misunderstanding of Germany is people not listening to what's happening in Germany. But equally, I think there's a tin ear in Germany sometimes not listening to what's happening in Greece and Spain and Italy. I do think that the moment, to me, the most wonderful moment, the best moment so far in this Eurozone crisis was actually the advent of Mario Monti as the Prime Minister of Italy, who has brought a degree of sanity, a degree of humour, and a degree of broad breadth of vision, which is very important. For the first time, Angela Merkel has somebody she can really talk to at the European table. And that's very important too. So there are, I think, some messages of hope, even if it's a very bumpy time. But I just want to thank the panel very much for an excellent discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.